Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
Empower your business or digital agency with Bluehost, trusted by over 5 million WordPress users globally. Bluehost features top-to-bottom hosting optimizations designed specifically for WordPress, giving you 24/7 access to a team of experts for support, plus thousands of WordPress help articles. So if you want to streamline WordPress website creation with intuitive controls and premium support, choose Bluehost, powering over 2 million websites worldwide.
Many new arrangements are being contrived as a result of the hard experience through which we have passed and many mistakes which no doubt we have made, for success is the result of making many mistakes and learning from experience. If the lull is to end, if the storm is to renew itself, London will be ready. London will not flinch. London can take it again. We ask no favours of the enemy. We seek from them no compunction. On the contrary, if tonight the people of London were asked to cast their vote whether a convention should be entered into to stop the bombing of all cities, the overwhelming majority would cry, "No, we will mete out to the Germans the measure, and more than the measure that they have meted out to us."
Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, the Second World War podcast with me, Al Murray, and James Holland, and part 4 of our Blitz series.
And since we last recorded, I've been beetling around the East End of London on a line bike. Going, oh well, that's obviously Brits damage. Oh no, there's half a wall. Oh, clearly Luftwaffe, 1941. It's absolutely amazing. I promise you'll never look at London the same way again.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Because we're recording this sort of a week after the rest of the stuff we've recorded, or the following week, and it's really made me think a lot about not just the Blitz, but what happened in what then follows in Germany. I know exactly what's going on. I'm thinking, God, this is ghastly because it's happening to places I know about, and it's because it's happening to this country, rather than thinking, oh well, they started it, which is how you rationalise a great deal of what happens in Germany. I think no matter how hard you try, no matter how dispassionate you try to be, there's a reap the whirlwind feeling. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, Jim?
We're all pulling on our inner Arthur Harris, aren't we?
Yeah. And I think that's very interesting. But actually examining it like this, you start to think, well, bombing's hideous. Whoever's doing it, no matter what reason, is the truth. But there we are. So
yes, my takeaway still is that the experience of the Blitz was much worse than I had given it credit for. And I think that's because I'd always looked at the kind of huge, a million tons of bombs dropped by Bomber Command compared to, 20,000 dropped by the Luftwaffe. Yeah. But actually, that's not really it's not really about numbers. It's about damage. Yeah. And then that's about what was there in the first place. And if all your buildings are wooden and narrow and the streets are narrow, then obviously it's a lot worse. Because in the first episode, we did Black Saturday and the start of the Blitz. Then we did the rest of 1940. Then we looked at living through the Blitz, and now it's 1941 because we're not doing the V bombs and all the rest of it. Yeah. No. V weapons. We're just doing the main Blitz, which goes up to middle of May 1941. Yeah. So we've got 5 months to get through.
But it's January 1941. It's a winter in the 1940s, freezing temperatures in January, and this causes. Problems in that fire engines needing to pump water have got a problem because they're frozen. The
turrets and on which the ladders are and stuff, that the mechanisms are all frozen as well.
Obviously, if you've got wet clothes, they'll stick to you. They'll freeze and stick to you. Firemen will have wet clothes. Slowing everything down, and people are trapped in rubble are freezing as well. So I mean, it's all.
And there's black ice on the roads when the ambulance is trying to go fast.
The weather's bad, so the raids are cut down. The Luftwaffe can't operate as much. So 13 nights there aren't raids across the month. But they do. But the nights they can, they do. So you've got a dual raid on London and Manchester on the 9th, 10th of January. So they're keeping the pressure up. I mean, this is the thing: is it's pretty much relentless pressure, isn't it? This.
Yeah. I think what you see really. I mean, I know we had Coventry in and we've had attacks on this, but what you really see is a widening of the operations because Hitler's accepted that Sea Lion's not going to happen now. It's completely cancelled outright on the 9th of January. And so what are they trying to do then? If they're not trying to kind of, if they're not trying to defeat the RAF anymore, then what's the point? So what they're trying to do is this is what Hitler says, is to attack the most important English harbours for imports, particularly port installations, the ships lying in them, or building, and to attack shipping, especially when home and bound.
So shipping is we've often said that Hitler lacks strategic sense, but that's absolutely spot on, isn't it? He's got that right, hasn't he?
On that particular occasion, yes.
Yeah. And so they go for Cardiff, Leith, Sunderland, Hull, Grimsby, London, Manchester, the shipping canal, of course, Liverpool, Swansea, Bristol, Avonmouth, and their vital harbour installations. And they're getting this right. Yeah, and
Portsmouth, Southampton as well, of course.
Yeah. So right from the start of January, 2nd or 3rd of January, Cardiff and Bristol, Cardiff cops it on the 2nd, Bristol on the 3rd. Yep. And this is, again, the Germans are starting to drop more incendiaries, aren't they? So it's a mixture of HE and incendiaries. You've got in Cardiff
They've got a tried and tested formula now.
Yeah, it's working. A parachute mine explodes outside Llandaff Cathedral, taking the roof off the nave. The top of the spire's dislodged. There's a huge crater in a churchyard hurling stone half a mile away. 165 people killed. Bristol, the Guildhall's gutted. Augustine's Church, one of the oldest in the city. The Royal Exchange and Templemead Station are burned. I mean, basically, if you go to modern Bristol, the centre of modern Bristol, you can see that this has happened. There's little strips that remain, but basically it's a 12-hour raid because, after all, winter offers you longer hours of darkness for the bombers to operate in. Yeah. And they drop a Satan. They drop the "Are We the Bad Guys" bomb, the Satan bomb. But it doesn't go off.
Yeah. I mean, these beasts are 9 feet long.
And 8 firemen are killed, 2 fire watchers. I mean, one of the things, fire watching is basically this idea that you stick people
on roofs and stuff.
On roofs and stuff. And obviously this is quite an interesting thing to make people volunteer for. The idea is so that...
Well, the idea is to knock out, is to get your stirrup pump out and chuck water over the incendiary.
Yeah. But also they're trying to minimise time spent in shelters, aren't they? So the idea is that because, if it's dark at 4 o'clock, people are still at work. The idea is, isn't it? People aren't, what they hope for is the discipline that people will not sound the alarm until they actually see the aircraft, and that's when people will leave the shop floor and go and hide to try and maximise production. So that's a job. If you're on the roof of a factory, do you really want to be on the roof of a factory?
Yeah. Hands up who's up for a bit of fire watching tonight. Yeah, exactly. I'll do it.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Maybe not.
And then January, the ports, the South Coast ports, continue to be hammered. So Portsmouth on the 10th of January, Southsea and Gosport, so that area. The Guildhall's gutted, warehouses and timber yards burn out of control, and high explosive and incendiaries. 250 dead and injured. And then Southampton again on the 19th of January, and Swansea on the 17th of January. I mean, this is like...
Southampton's already been hit very, very badly on the 30th of November and on the 1st of December. I mean, what they tend to do is they quite often they go, right, okay, we're going to go to X now, and we'll hit it 2 nights in a row or 3 nights in a row or whatever. And then it's London's turn again. So 4 major raids on London in January. Liverpool Street Station is hit on the 11th of January, killing 43. Then Bank Station is hit by a high explosive bomb at 7:59 p.m. the same night. Booking Hall, Circular Gallery all caved in. Huge crater in the road outside. 111 people killed, including 53 shelterers, people who are sheltering there. And Veer Hodgson, who we've mentioned a number of times, she's the diarist who's living in Notting Hill. She records it. It's said that the blast blew many people onto the live rails and they were electrocuted immediately. So this is Bank Underground Station. So this idea that you're in an underground station and you're safe, I mean, that's just not the case still.
No.
It is, but you're not. It's not without risk. That's the point, I suppose.
Well, and everything, it's all relative, isn't it?
12th of January. Gone.
But that's part of the calculation people are making, and we talked about before about how people want freedom from noise, sociability, and being bomb-proof is third. And it's kind of, it is an acceptance that if it's going to get you, it's going to get you. While you're sheltering, you want it as agreeable as possible. And that's the calculus that people are making. And now we're months and months into the Blitz. People are sort of calculating quite sort of casually in a way, aren't they?
So 12th of January, it's the turn of the London docks again. Incendiary start fires and the Victoria and Albert docks and at Woolwich Arsenal. Lambeth Hospital is hit. I mean, it's amazing how many times hospitals are hit. I suppose it's because they're big buildings, isn't it? But over 100 more are killed that night. Bexon Gasworks is hit again. Do you remember that was one of the first ones that was hit? That was literally on the first afternoon, I think. Yeah. Of Black Saturday. South London's badly hit on the 29th of January. Anyway, total losses in January in London are 922 killed and 1,927 seriously injured. I mean, this is amazing. So, Anti-Aircraft Command, Major General Frederick Pyle, 12 shots down for the expenditure of 49,044 shells, which is 4,087 rounds per shot down aircraft, or a 0.0244% chance of shell hitting an aircraft, which actually is still in line with German anti-aircraft guns in the beginning of 1944 over Germany, where they've got 15,000 of the bastards.
It's quite amazing, isn't it?
It's just basically a complete waste of time.
Pyle is playing this sort of game, isn't he? That they are firing all these shells off, but they're wearing out their barrels with doing this. You've got to decide, because afterwards what we talked about in the previous episode, that they're firing the guns to reassure people that something's being done, right? But that's also wearing out your guns, isn't it?
It's also making the bombers that are coming over scatter all over the place and bomb less accurately, so more civilians get killed as a result. Where
do you defend? Because you don't know where the Germans are going night to night. You can't defend everywhere, and they do wind some of the gunnery down, don't they? Because basically, it's this 0. But
if you think about it, okay, so yes, so if you but generally speaking, you think about this concentrated effort of the Blitz, which has been going on since September. Okay, so the Germans haven't invaded. Great. Everyone knows that the war's not going particularly well. And if you ever want to realise why the war isn't going particularly well, go to the East End of London and see the kind of piles of rubble and all the rest of it. It doesn't make you feel sanguine, does it? No one's doing enough. You feel put upon. And
also, this is after Dunkirk. Let's not,
this is after Dunkirk. You can't sugarcoat it, can you?
You can't sugarcoat it. I mean, this is the thing. The army's been sent packing, and now it looks like you can't do your power. I mean,
I think this is why everyone's so down on the British war effort, and you've got the sort of motions of no confidence against Churchill in 1942. It's because there's just this catalogue of bad news, and there's visual bad news, which is piles of rubble and
feeling of impotence, surely.
Right.
Yeah. And night fighter ops aren't getting any better either, are they? They're getting nowhere, and they are stopping the Exverfahren. So there is some jamming going on. But the point is, that if the Germans are vectoring on burning cities anyway, and the Germans are developing a sort of Pathfinder thing, aren't they, as well at the same time? So they are beginning to figure out how to mark targets, all that sort of stuff. If they're scattered, it adds pressure anyway. If you're disrupting the German bomb stream, whatever. That's the thing, isn't it? The effect is the effect is the effect is the effect, right?
So February 1941, really, really bad weather again. Winter's terrible in the 1940s. Very bad weather brings quite a lot of respite. I mean, the Luftwaffe just can't operate, so only 789 killed and 1,688 seriously injured in February.
So that's a battalion, for instance. That's like if the civilians are the front line, and this is how they're seeing themselves at this point. There's a magazine called Front Line, and a lot of the messaging is we are all on the front line now. We are all, you might be civilians, but this is the new front line in the new style of war, which obviously people like and they don't like. Thanks a bunch. Then Swansea's hit.
Well, Swansea is the recipient of the worst raids in February, without any question down. 19th, 20th, 21st of February. Those 3 nights in a row.
Yeah, that's a mile square inferno that you could see in Devon. I mean, that's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah, across the Bristol Channel.
40 acres totally razed to the ground.
I mean, 40 acres, that's a lot.
575 business premises and the David Evans department store. All in all, 230 killed and 6,500 made homeless. Swansea suffered more deaths and material damage from enemy action than anywhere else in Wales in the war. But I mean, if you easy to find, isn't it? It's along a coast, because after all, this is the thing that the Germans know that you can navigate using water. Road maps, no point with road maps, they're out of date. But they can navigate using, if you're finding somewhere on the coast, it's dead easy, isn't it? Go on,
so things really, really pick up in March.
Yeah.
And it starts to get really heavy. And we actually got a nice little quote here, haven't we?
Yeah. The street was as flat as this here wharfside. There was just my house. Well, part of my house. My missus was just making me a cup of tea for when I come home. She were in the passage between the kitchen and the wash house where it blowed her. She were burnt right up to her waist. Her legs were just two cinders, and her face. The only thing I could recognise her by was one of her boots. I'd have lost 15 homes if I could have kept my missus. We used to read together. I can't read myself. She used to read to me like. We'd have our armchairs on either side of the fire, and she read me a bit out of the paper. We'd a paper every evening. Every evening. And that wasn't a ARP warden from Hull.
And again, you're bringing a statistic down to the personal, aren't you? So the Luftwaffe are back in March with an absolutely incredible vengeance, and not a single one of the major cities in the UK escapes.
Yeah.
It's just
and London's 6 further major raids on London, 8th and 9th of March. So Buckingham Palace again is struck. The Rialto Cinema near Leicester Square is hit. Bomb hits the Café de Paris.
Yeah, famously. Yeah. Advertises the safest and gayest restaurant in town, 20 feet below ground.
Oh, God. You put a big X on yourself with that. I mean, honestly.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, I've seen photos of the aftermath of this. It's an absolute horror story. Yeah. It's packed with officers on leave, women. Ken Snake Hips Johnson and his band are playing when 110-pound bombs come crashing down through the roof. Snake Hips are killed. Another member of his band and the head waiter Charles is also killed. 30 diners. Betty Baldwin, daughter of former Prime Minister, she's injured, hurt in it. It's amazing. It's just absolute carnage in there.
I mean, there's
sorts of upturned tables and
the bomber literally getting through to Stanley Baldwin's daughter. I mean, that's quite something, isn't it?
Well, he did say that it would.
He said he did say that it would, and he's being proved right. The night fighter effort at this point, Sholto Douglas has taken over from Dowding, hasn't he? And they've bow fighters now. By March 41, it's bow fighters, and they've got the airborne interception and Mark IV radar for nighttime operations, but it's not online yet. In January, the RAF need 198 sorties for every German aircraft shot down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as bad as the anti.
It's not great, is it?
And in March, they get it down to 47 sorties per German aircraft claim. But this is not good, is it?
No. I mean, Luftwaffe losses do go up, but
yeah. Well, but there's a multiplier, isn't there? That the Luftwaffe crews, you're starting to churn through crews. You've got less experienced people coming in. That you get that thing of the gradual attrition starts to bite into what the Luftwaffe are capable of. But also, the RAF are getting better at it. But most of what the RAF are capable of doing, and most home defence is basically it's that thing that by the time the Blitz is over, they're starting to get it right, and it's sort of too late. Can't practice anymore. Portsmouth is then hit on the 11th to 12th of March. This is the 37th raid on Portsmouth.
That's amazing, isn't it? But some of those are kind of like, jitter raids for a couple
of... Jitter raids, small raids and all that. But still, that's going to keep you up at night, isn't it?
I mean, as we know, Portsmouth was just absolutely gutted in the war. I mean, all that city centre was completely ripped to pieces. 193 high explosive bombs, including a number of the maximum, those 5,500-pound bombs, and 46,000 incendiaries. So fires in the fuel storage depots and the Royal Navy barracks. Same like Birmingham's hit. 12th and 13th of March, Merseyside is hit. It's a full moon. Docks and Camel-Laird shipworks are main target. Docks badly hit. Cold stores and granaries destroyed. 2 ships sunk. Terrible damage to terraced working-class houses. A number of landmarks, Cotton Exchange, General Post Office, White Star Building all hit and burned. Birkenhead cops it the worst. 264 killed and thousands left homeless. And then it's Clydeside, so they turn on Scotland. Glasgow University is hit on the 13th, 14th of March. Also a hospital and school, 80 workers killed when a bomb hit a shelter at the Yarrows shipyard. Com centre at Clydeside is put out of action, and that, of course, causes a massive headache for the civil defence services. Back again the following night, the 14th, 15th of March. City is still burning with red glows in the night from the previous night, so it guides them straight back. The Rolls-Royce plant at Hillingdon hit, as are the oil storage tanks at Dalnotar and the power station at Yoker.
In Merseyside, days lost at the docks is something like 1.5 days' work lost, isn't it? It's the interesting thing is actually the docks keep going, and you're using these supplies maybe, and people's lives are being disrupted. But actually, and you know, this thing called trekking develops, doesn't it? Where people, you know, in Portsmouth, people are led out of the town by the mayor and go and camp outside Portsmouth and then come back in once the raid's over. You know, and the government's very nervous about it to start with. And then they realise people are actually coming back to work in the morning, and that they
it's amazing, isn't it?
And they can rely on people, you know, because so much of the way the government's approached this is at what point the civilian population going to break? How long can we rely on them for under this kind of pressure? And they don't break. And so you know, in Hull, the trekking becomes formalised in the end, and they basically build they put kitchens in, and they build like temporary accommodation for people, so that if they leave,
it's like a refugee camp.
Yeah, literally like a refugee camp. If they leave town en masse, they're putting buses on and everything to get people out of the city so they're safe while it's being bombed, and they bring them back to work in the morning, and they come back to work in the morning. It's absolutely amazing. But people think of evacuation, but they don't. The trekking isn't part of the picture, I think.
No. I think you're right. It is amazing, and but I think with all these things, you know, it's how quickly you get used to the new normal. Yeah. You know, the shock of the new, and then normalisation of it is it's just incredible. But at Clydeside, only 8 out of Clydeside's 12,000 houses escaped damage.
Jesus Christ.
I know. It's unbelievable. 55,000 Clydesiders lose their homes. 1,000 killed, 1,600 seriously injured. God. There's also a shortage of coffins up there because they prepared for it in London, but not in Clydeside.
God.
So most of them are just buried en masse tied up sheets. Just horrendous. So Clydeside, after the Clydeside Blitz, 35,000 out of a population of 47,000 were homeless. It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah,
and the following month, there's only 2,000 people still sleeping in the town because of the unbelievable.
So 15th, 16th of March, London's hit again. 100 tons, high explosive, 16,000 incendiaries, across 30 boroughs. In Southgate in North London, a single bomb kills 42 civilians. 16th of March, rescue workers in Liverpool heard what they thought was a kitten in a bombed house in Lancaster Avenue, but when they clawed away the debris, they discovered a baby girl, a few months old, who'd been buried for 3.5 days. They gently kind of ease her out of the rubble, and you discover that both the parents have been killed.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? More incendiaries, electricity supplies cut, public shelter in the city's hit, killing 25. St Barnabas Church crypt hit as well, 15 killed. Clifton's smashed up a bit. I mean, warehouses and factories again, 6,000 homes wrecked. Hull on the 18th and 19th of March. So it's a foggy night, so they don't hit their targets. 300 tons of high explosive, 77,000 incendiaries. And again, it's residential areas that are copping it. 62 people killed, but Hull very much bashed up. And this is, you know, trekking in Hull is a big thing. They end up with a cushion belt, as they call it, for 35,000 people that's organised.
Yeah, amazing. London's hit again on the 19th, 20th of March. 500 bombers this time. I mean, you're now getting that's quite serious. 122,000 incendiaries, 470 tons of high explosives over 6 hours. Again, they're aiming for the docks, but Stepney, Poplar, West Ham, again, absolutely pummeled. Several big Max bombs, 8 hospitals hit. Should we take a break there, and then before we get to the Plymouth Blitz?
Yes, let's take a break before
take a deep breath before we get onto this another catalogue of destruction.
Horrendous. Okay, yes, we'll do exactly that. We'll take a break, and then once you've steeled yourselves, we'll return with the Plymouth Blitz.
Empower your business or digital agency with Bluehost, trusted by over 5 million WordPress users globally. Bluehost features top-to-bottom hosting optimizations designed specifically for WordPress, giving you 24/7 access to a team of experts for support, plus thousands of WordPress help articles. So if you want to streamline WordPress website creation with intuitive controls and premium support, choose Bluehost, powering over 2 million websites worldwide.
Welcome back to Weird Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and James Holland. And our fourth part of our Blitz series, we left you on a cliffhanger there. Plymouth is about to really, and anyone who's been to modern Plymouth will know, that the whole city centre is new. Or, there are no old-fashioned buildings left, really, are there? Because Plymouth absolutely is plastered, isn't it?
It's destroyed.
Yeah, it's destroyed. And this is the 21st of March, 1941. I mean, this is interesting. It's a narrow scrape. Early on the 20th, the King and Queen are visited. They have tea with Nancy Astor, who's the first female MP. There's a gala day with bands playing on Plymouth Hoe. And they've barely left the royal family when 125 bombers drone over, aiming for the port and the docks. And immediately, fires in the city centre. So they're attacking the docks, aren't they? But it's this thing that it's what in the end Arthur Harris calls, in order to hit anything, you have to bomb everything. Everyone in the war comes to accept as the way they're going to have to do. They're going to have to do this. So you get a very large fire in the Great Western Docks, which again can be seen from miles and miles away. The next day, it's a brick-pitted desert. Guildhall's still standing, but as a skeleton. City Hospital, St Andrew's Church, law courts all destroyed. Departments, basically the whole of the centre of
department stores, schools, churches, synagogue, 2 Salvation Army halls, shops, cinemas, cafes, pubs, hotels, libraries, Officer and Promenade Pier, all destroyed. I mean, not burned, destroyed. Derry's clock tower, local landmark, remains, but the mechanism is smashed. And on the Hoe, the sappers are trying to clear a UXB, an unexploded bomb, when it explodes, killing 5 men. And amazing, in those 2 raids, 18,000 houses destroyed, 5,000 made homeless, 336 killed, 283 seriously injured. Doreen Hurd is a 17-year-old ambulance driver called out to a part where a landmine's been dropped on a maze of underground shelters full of people. And she wrote, "When I arrived, soldiers with lights were digging people out at the sides of the crater. Some were just parts of bodies. And where it was possible, we had to attach a label to the body or parts with my name and the name of the first aid post and whether it was male or female. We then went into the shelter and there were all these people just sitting, some with children still on their laps, people with glasses on and the glass still intact. And they were all dead, killed by the blast. Their hair looked like wigs, sort of lifeless, dusty."
These are scenes from hell, aren't they?
Genuinely shocked by all this, I have to say. So much of Britain's cities are now all making sense. Those city centres, those sort of 1960s tower blocks and stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now.
So much of how we live now is shaped by this event. I mean, when people say...
it's why people go on and on. When we were growing up, everyone talked about the war and the Blitz, didn't they?
But when people talk about the legacy of the Second World War, and it's not just a welfare state and an NHS or the political settlement that followed and all that sort of stuff. And it's completely radically changed urban landscape. So at the end of March, on the 31st, Hull is hit again because and Hull is the other thing to remember is Hull is easy to find of all the targets in England. Hull is the easiest to find, easiest to get to, easiest to get away from. If you're the Luftwaffe, it couldn't be simpler as a prospect. Because they can't get to Merseyside. There's bad weather in Merseyside, so all right. Well, it's a sort of cheap win in an important place. Make no mistake. The ARP headquarters is hit by a parachute mine. Deputy Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Diamond, is killed instantly. Fire watchers on the roof also killed. And all that was ever found of PC Robert Garton, the policeman standing guard at the door, were fragments of uniform.
So beginning of April, Avonmouth is hit twice in a row. Yeah. What they have got, though, is they've got these decoy sites, these starfish sites.
Starfish.
Which are quite interesting. They've got one for, you can, if you go up to Nairn Head on the Roseland Peninsula, you've got the remains of a starfish site for Falmouth. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So the idea is that these are dummy cities. So what you do is when the raiders come in, you kind of you sight up flares and stuff, and from the sky it looks like it's on fire. And you even have dummy buildings and dummy factories and all the rest of it, and it looks like they're all burning. and they drop it on there rather than on the real target. That's there's some it does work a bit, doesn't it?
And they use them. They ignite them 70 times in 1941. The starfish they used, so that they used a lot. Very often it'll mean that some farmer in the morning will find his cattle have been bombed, and they're like staggering around with missing limbs and been smashed up. But and that's regarded, obviously that's a result, relatively speaking, isn't it? But scenes of horror in rural Devon or wherever. It's interesting. There's one in Richmond Park. I mean, you'd kind of think, fine, okay, but so they miss the starfish, they bomb Richmond, or they bomb Wimbledon, or they bomb,
East Sheen. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the 7th of April, Merseyside's hit again, Clydeside as well, but 172 bombers. I mean, this is a big effort all the time.
It is. It just keeps coming, doesn't it, every night?
Yeah.
9th of 10th is Newcastle's turn, 9th of 10th of April.
Yeah.
5-hour, 120 bomber assault, 150 tons of HE, 50,000 incendiaries, Jarrow, Gateshead, North and South Shields also hit, Tyne Docks burned, warehouses going up. I mean, it's the same, isn't it, every single time? Sunderland's Town Hall is set on fire, plus the Queen's Theatre in South Shields, 40 killed, 100 seriously injured. Same night, Birmingham is also hit with 40,000 incendiaries, 280 tons of HE.
And then 11th, 12th of April is Good Friday. And although Hitler gave everyone Christmas off, he's not so fussed about Easter, is he? Bombers again come to Bristol and Avonmouth, 150 people killed, 200 tons of HE, 35,000 incendiaries. Docks, city centres, Clifton industrial and commercial buildings, Colston's girls' school and a public library all smashed up or destroyed. Taylor's department store, St Paul's Church of Bedminster destroyed. I mean, you always get the feeling like from these lists, is there anything left to bomb? I mean,
I know. It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? The amazing thing about this one is you had the King and Queen just escaping from Plymouth in March. Yeah. This time, Churchill himself, he's touring the bomb damage of Swansea and Cardiff. Previous day, on the 11th, with the US Ambassador John Wynant. Churchill's the Chancellor of Bristol University. And so on the 12th of April, he's due to give honorary degrees to both Wynant and Minis that day. So they're on a train, they're on the kind of prime ministerial train in sidings overnight when it gets attacked. So they're all woken by the sound of sirens and bombs and whatever. Another close one. They survive the night, and then they think, before the ceremony in the afternoon, we'll go tour the bomb damage. There's fires still smouldering. And Jock Colville, who is one of the Prime Minister's secretaries, goes, there was devastation such as I never thought possible. But amazingly, and I absolutely love this, the graduation ceremony still goes ahead, with graduates arriving with sort of smudged and badly washed faces. Colville says they had their ceremonial robes over their firefighting clothes, which was still wet. Anyway, afterwards, they do all the ceremony, he hands over the degrees, all the rest, it's all done fine. And there's crowds of people there to watch Churchill's train depart. And once again, he's brought to tears running down, and he goes, they have such confidence. It is a grave responsibility.
I mean, do you think when he vows to fight on in the early summer of 1940 that this is what it's going to be?
I suspect he has got an inkling, don't you?
Maybe, but this is because this is, armies overseas. That's one thing, right? You'd have to be worrying about it because after all, like I say, as the great historian of Marlborough, he's thinking in terms of armies on foreign shores fighting in coalitions. That's Churchill's strategic mindset, isn't it?
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah. As
a historian, as a man with an understanding of history, this is new. This is uncharted territory, and of course, nothing like this since the Civil War on British soil.
No, nothing like it.
There's European wars of armies have gone backwards and forwards across Europe since then, smashing cities up, putting towns to the sword, blah 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 blah. But it is nothing comparable has happened here. I mean, as well as the thing we were talking about the other day, the imperial centres suddenly vulnerable, and what that must mean all over the world, the political ramifications of the sort of culture shock of that across the world. But. When he's saying I have nothing to offer but blood, sweat, toil and tears, does he also, did he have this in mind the year before?
I don't know.
Because it's a fresh category, isn't it?
But why wouldn't you be reduced to tears looking at all this?
I mean, of course you would. But
seeing people come out and cheer you. When you're the Prime Minister of a country which is under sort of continual attack and everyone's losing their homes. I mean,
you're the person who insisted on fighting on. this is a result of it. London, there's then on the 16th, 17th of April, it's the heaviest raid of the Blitz on up to that point. And this is 685 sorties.
That's
800. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, we're talking 1,000 bomber raids. The following year, just about by a bomber command, aren't we? But this is 685 sorties, 890 tons of high explosive, 150,000 incendiaries.
That's a lot.
That's meaning business, isn't it?
Yeah,
Warehouses, factories along the Thames. The West End is also hit. Parliament, the Admiralty, the Law Courts, St Paul's are all hit. So the governmental centre of London, Leicester Square, Oxford Street, 19 churches are destroyed.
Yeah, Oxford Street, Bournemouth, Hollingworth is the department store at the end of Tottenham Court Road end is badly hit. So on this raid vote, 66 boroughs hit, 2,000 individual fires, of which 50 are labelled major or serious. 74 people killed in Bromley in Kent. A 3-story block of flats at Elephant Castle's badly damaged, and the next morning the rescue parties hear faint cries. There's 2 girls found, one dead under a kitchen table, the other still alive, but only just. She does survive though. And in all that night, 1,180 killed, including many ARP wardens. And every time you got an ARP warden, that means you've got to replace them with another ARP warden who's not as experienced, blah, blah, blah. 2,230 seriously injured. And, it is the worst night up to that point. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And they come back on the 19th and 20th. Previous worst night is then trumped. 1,200 killed, referred to thereafter as the Saturday. Chelsea Royal Hospital killed, hit rather. And among those who were killed that night are 3 Chelsea pensioners, including one aged 101.
And they are now pathfinding essentially. So the bombers come in, they drop flares, they mark the targets, which is the stuff that Bomber Command will end up doing later in the war with Christmas tree lights and all that sort of stuff. But and it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Especially if now what you've done is you're bombing areas, you're dehousing, and you're hitting the right places. But Plymouth's basically trashed, isn't it?
Yeah, eradicated. So it becomes a journalists head down there. People want to look at it. That everyone knows just how bad it is in Plymouth. I mean, Plymouth seems to be proportionally the kind of worst hit of any city in the UK. And one of them is the American journalist Quentin Reynolds, who I wrote about when I was talking about Salerno and the invasion of Italy. And Reynolds says, "Nothing I had seen prepared me for the sight of Plymouth." A mass observation went down there as well, which is this opinion finding organisation. The civic and domestic devastation exceeds anything we've seen. Neighbouring Devonport is also pretty much wiped out. And one Plymouth shopkeeper wrote that he could stand in the central shopping area of Plymouth and Devonport without being able to see an inhabited building and practically without seeing any walls standing. That's the end for Plymouth. 26th of April, Merseyside hit again. Then the following night, it's Portsmouth again. Major raids. It's just absolutely hideous. 5th, 6th of May, Clydeside is hit again. And again, the following night, high-density tenement blocks hit again.
There's a huge loss of life there, isn't there? And they're hitting the shipyards, John Brown Shipyard, Yoker's Shipyard at Rothesay Docks, Singer's Factory, and the timber yard, the gasworks at Greenock explodes as well. And 90% of, one of the things about, we were talking about trekking earlier, but evacuation is the thing I think that people associate most closely with the sort of civil defence measure for the Blitz. But basically, everyone's come back. Evacuation is unpopular as it is. It's unfondly regarded, I think is the best way of putting it. That there is that period when the war starts and then nothing happens. And so people come back for that reason. There's also interesting that you have within the ARP establishment, you have people complaining they got nothing to do before the bombing starts. And recruitment starts to sort of, people stop turning up and all this sort of thing. Now the Blitz has got going though. You've got this. You get a second evacuation, particularly where we're talking about in Scotland, and 100,000 children and mothers leave Glasgow, Clydebank, Dumbarton, and Greenock.
That's a lot of people. We're now in May 1941, so the Blitz is coming to an end, but it isn't coming to an end for Merseyside because this is, although we've mentioned Merseyside being hit a number of times, this at the beginning of May is the big one. And, frankly, Liverpool is an important target for the Luftwaffe because it's
incredibly important target.
It's the main hub from which, Atlantic convoys are coming into. So the first 8 days in May, Merseyside is hit every single night. And the night of the 3rd and 4th of May is without doubt the worst in the city's history. 300 bombers and the heart of old Liverpool just totally gutted.
The second most heavily bombed urban area, dwarfed by what happens in London, but it is this, because it's London is 18,800 tons of bombs. Liverpool in the end is 1,957 tons of bombs. But still, and again, it's one of this. The heart of the city is destroyed, isn't it? It's completely gutted.
The SS Malakand, which is a steamer, which is packed with 1,000 tons of shells, also here. It's absolutely impossible to get the blaze of that under control. So, what they really need to do is scuttle the ship, but they can't do that. And a few hours after the all clear, she blows up. The ship's anchor is thrown 100 yards and bits of steel plate up to 2 miles. I mean, crikey. Half the dock's 144 shipping berths are rendered unusable. 57 vessels sunk or destroyed in the mouth of the harbour, so shipping can't get in and out. The overhead railway and roads severely damaged. Admiral Sir Percy Noble, who is the commander of Western Approaches, I shudder to think what would have happened if the Blitz had gone on for 3 more days. I mean, fortunately it isn't, but Bootle is one of the suburbs of Liverpool, is very, very badly hit. 200 homes demolished, 3,000 damaged just on the May 3rd alone. Town Hall, dye works, cold storage plant, Bryant's Maze, match factory, offices of Vernon's football pools all badly damaged. Mill Road Infirmary hit by massive bomb that destroyed 3 hospital buildings, surrounding houses. 12 Women's Voluntary Service WVS workers among those killed. A rest centre gets a direct hit. Bootle, only 1 in 10 homes escaped destruction or damage. 1 in 4 are left homeless. A third of all shops destroyed, all main roads blocked, and 12 rest centres in Bootle. 11 are put out of action.
By the 8th of May, half the population have fled to the countryside as well. They might. Trekking.
6,000 demolition and clearance workers pouring over the debris, including 2,500 troops who've been brought in.
And then on the 4th of May, waves hitting Bootle again, another wave of carnage. Belgian Seamen's hostel is destroyed. The SS Sandals sunk. St Sylvester School gutted. The Rotuna Theatre in Scotland Road. And in this week in May, 1,900 people are killed. 1,450 seriously wounded. 66,000 houses destroyed.
Oh, God. Yeah. It's incredible, isn't it? 70,000 left homeless. The longest unbroken series of serious attacks on any provincial of the whole war.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Merseyside has a very depressed and sordid atmosphere, writes one person. This is partly due to the blackness and the number of very poor seen in the streets, and is enhanced by the Blitz debris. PRO Home Intelligence Report. But also you've got these last attacks on London. The last major attack on London is the 9th, the 10th, and 11th of May. And goodness me, that is just awful. I mean, it's almost 8 months a day after Black Saturday. It's a cloudless night. It's full moon. Naval College at Greenwich is hit. So too the War Office, Westminster School, British Museum. 250,000 books destroyed. Westminster Hall in the House of Parliament is set ablaze. Everyone's terribly worried about that. So it gets under control pretty quickly. But it's Public Record Office in Chancery Lane is hit. And that's the one that destroys 2/3 of all the First World War records. Yeah. Mansion House is hit, plus the halls of various companies, Mercers, Butchers, Cordwainers, Salters. Churches include St Mary Le Bow and St Stephen's Walbrook. Westminster Abbey is also hit. 14 hospitals, including St Thomas's. 2,000 fires that night from Shadwell and Whitechapel to Southwark and Westminster. And it doesn't help matters that the Thames is so low. Elephant and Castle, medium fire, fans out. They just can't get it under control. It turns into a monster complication, which is one of the reasons why it's such an absolute, not the nicest place of London these days. 5,000 homes lost, 1,500 killed, 2,000 seriously injured. It's absolutely the worst. So Cecil King, who is the chairman of the Daily Mirror, he writes, towards morning, the smoke was such that you could not see that it was a full moon with no clouds. The air was full of flying sparks. Every now and then there was a roar of a collapsing house. The lines from Paddington and Euston were blocked. King's Cross had a direct hit. And most southern railway termini were closed. The Temple Church, one of the great monuments of English history, was on fire. St Clement Danes had been gutted, and only the spire was alight halfway up to the top and sending showers and sparks. An odd and rather beautiful spectacle. But that is the end of the Blitz. And, it's worth sort of considering what damage it did. So shipbuilding was definitely set back, armaments industry set back, but it's certainly not incapacitated by any stretch of the imagination. The British have worked quickly. They've already worked out the need for shadow factories way before the Blitz starts. This is something that happens, in the winter of 39-40. So Vickers Weybridge plant, for example, is hit in September 1940, but then dispersed to 42 different sites, all within 20 miles, employing a total of 10,000, but no more than 500 on any one site. The Ministry of Home Security, and this is the really interesting statistic, calculates that out of 6,699 economic key points, only 884 have been hit. And by the end of the Blitz, monthly aircraft production is 25% higher than when the Blitz started.
Yes, it's truly amazing, isn't it?
So only 8 out of 558 factories that are attacked have been destroyed.
Yeah, it's truly amazing that.
Yeah.
But also maybe a warning that if you're going to do it yourself, it's more difficult than it might first appear. And basically, dispersal becomes the sort of key to everything. So food stocks are dispersed away from docks and all this sort of stuff. There's an amazing thing in Newcastle, bomb hitting a quayside warehouse, it results in an enormous congealed syrup of flour, fat and sugar that nourishes, this is in Richard Overy's book, nourishes swarms of fat flies so dense that local people had to drink their tea through a straw from covered cups to prevent it from being contaminated by the flies. Disgusting. But I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because places are destroyed and cities are smashed up, but very quickly work goes into restoring the housing stock and to making sure people have places to live. And you know, when we've been talking about this, we keep thinking about putting my mind to Ukraine. You know, you watch those videos of flying bombs, you know, basically those Shahid drones going over. It's doodlebugs. It's the same thing. The fact that people are out on the street filming them go by rather than in a shelter kind of tells you something, doesn't it? And also how quickly people have had to adapt in Ukraine to a new normal, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, it
is amazing because out of every 300 people bombed out, 280 returned to their homes within 6 months. By January 1941, so even, you know, it's the middle of the Blitz, 80% of 500,000 houses damaged in London have been repaired. And by the end of the Blitz, 1.6 million houses returned to use, with 271,000 still undergoing repairs. I mean, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
So it's the civilian population who are literally on this front line, as it's called. What it enables you to do is sell the idea of total war, doesn't it? If you're the government, and it stiffens resolve, and you know, from now on you've got bombs with "This is for Coventry" written on them, regardless, and gliders and anyway.
Well, I think we should end this series with a diary entry from Veer Hodgson, which I thought was just, it really made me stop and think this one. So this is from Sunday the 11th of May. So this is after the last final worst attack on London of the entire Blitz. And she writes, "I feel we must have sinned grievously as a nation to have such sacrifices demanded of us. Indeed, future generations will say we have not taken care of what was handed down to us. We should have been more careful to defend it. We must pay the price now, but it is terrible to think of the wasted years when, sunk in enjoyment, we did not realize that the days of all we looked on as precious were numbered, that our rulers and ourselves had lost their way in a mist of false high thinking, and common sense had gone." It's been fascinating, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. The horror that is to be inflicted on Germany, the scale of the bombing, you can place in a context now of what's happened here, and those are big raids on London. You know, the challenges that Bomber Command face in order to try and bring the war to the industrial heartland of Germany are of a completely different order. So again, when you look at the Butt report and go, they can't hit nothing. You know, the RAF their effort's terrible. They can't find any. You know, they can't find their targets. They can't bomb them. Well, no, because it's a completely different challenge. The navigational challenges, the challenges are completely different. For all the resilience we've just talked about, the fact that the housing stock is repaired, factories aren't destroyed, but that's because it's the German thing where they give up. Their campaign peters out because of their other priorities. It's so interesting, Jim. Thanks very much for listening. We'll get round to the V-bomb Blitz because that's another story to talk about too, isn't it? At some point,
we'll do that. Well, you know, we're stockpiling stuff to talk about. We've got the rest of our lives.
Fantastic. Goodbye, everybody. Cheerio.
Cheerio.